What happened in the sprint?
For the Belgian Grand Prix.
So let's dive into it and begin with the Max start, of course, who, did exactly what he needed to do. Now, some people have criticised his sim racing and the amount he sim races, and does he put things, where's his priorities for things? I guarantee he has done that move virtually 1,000,000 times, what he did, and how he positioned the car. Because I guess some people, maybe people that haven't watched Formula 1 for a very long time, might have thought, oh, he's got a pretty bad run out of turn 1, and he's quite far behind Oscar going towards Eau Rouge and up Raidillon. But no, that was absolutely what he wanted to do. He wanted that gap so that he could then slingshot out of turn 1, not have to do any silly games as he goes up the hill, and just get the momentum as he reaches the crest of the hill and then down the straight. And he could not have judged that more to perfection. And after that, I was even surprised to see him be able to hold on, but we'll get onto that. As for the Max start, he could not have done that better. It was perfection.
It really was. We said it in the watch along, like you say, that is you're watching a guy that just lives and breathes motorsport and racing and knows the tricks and everything to do with racecraft and how you position your car exactly right. There's a very famous clip of Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel where Hamilton eases off before Eau Rouge and Raidillon because he knows you don't want to be too close because then you don't get that amazing slipstream effect, because of course no DRS on the first lap. Like, that was all just Max getting an amazing slipstream and having the advantage of the skinny wing that he had. But what he did brilliantly was just take turn 1 and he just gave enough of a gap where, like you say, you kind of maybe people that weren't aware going, oh, he's not really that close. That was all judged to perfection, and then he could just get that amazing run up, and he knew that taking that lead into Le Combe, it would be incredibly difficult, but once he's in the lead, he just hopes that it ends up a kind of another boring 2024 race where it's very difficult to overtake. And 2025 race, sorry. I was reading the words 2024 in the sheet. 2025 race where, it's very hard to overtake, and of course you don't have a pit stop. So as long as he could hold on and basically just fight Piastri off down the straight with DRS, which he did, he was fine for the rest of the race.
Yeah, and I think that even that is understating the drive that he's done today. Like, to say that, that he gets the lead, he has low downforce set up, he's done it. That's not what I'd probably just label the entire race for Max Verstappen. I think it was a brilliantly judged race. Like, his car is not as fast as the McLaren's. We've seen that. We saw it in qualifying, and I don't think he could have. Obviously, made a mistake, didn't he? Which allowed Piastri a little bit of a look towards the end of the race, but. I was thoroughly impressed with how Max was able to keep his tyres in a good window, be able to do that middle sector good enough to be able to not allow Oscar anywhere near, and then utilise, of course, in the first and third sectors, his low drag setup. It just phenomenal work because had he messed up lap 1, no chance he wins that race. If he had not got through on Oscar wins that, and I back the fact that Oscar would have walked it, but he didn't.
Not only Oscar wins it, then Max is under huge pressure, probably from Lando as well.
Lando beats him as well.
Whether it's the same situation where Max can hold him off, but obviously he'd be under pressure. It's hard to say if Lando would have beaten him. It would have been touch and go, but obviously it puts him under pressure from that car. Oscar would have been off in the distance because of just how quick he was in the middle sector, but as we kind of said, like, you can't really overtake in that middle sector. You can get close, but the advantage for Max was where Oscar got close. They, of course, have very skinny wings, and we'll get onto this, that it is incredibly hard to overtake when that DRS is just not as powerful because, of course, when a DRS wing is so thin, it's not as extreme, is it?
Exactly. I guess for the initial part of this podcast, I just want to essentially emphasize that the car doesn't drive itself, and that Max was phenomenal, I think, in this sprint to be able to keep the McLarens at bay, because I fully I fully expected the McLaren to get through, even if Max got through on lap 1. I thought that they'd have a great chance. Turns out, obviously not. But I think that was down to Max, and maybe this is turning into a glazing podcast.
He made the race boring because of him fighting. I said this in the watch along. It reminds me. We're seeing quite a few races this season where it feels like such a repeat of 2020 when Max was just trying to hang on to in occasional races to those 2020 Mercs, the Hambot Ver era, if you were watching that time where that became such a meme, where the Red Bull is not as good as the McLaren. The McLaren is mighty at every single track, and just occasionally when Max kind of puts an almost faultless race in and can, do what he does as a 4-time champion, he can take the fight to them and occasionally get the odd win.
Exactly. Question from DC Wrestle. What tweaks do McLaren need to, or should, make to address the same problem happening tomorrow? I don't think they need to make any changes whatsoever, DC Wrestle, because sprint races don't have strategy, doesn't open up an undercut, an overcut. Essentially, some free air for the McLaren to do that middle sector correctly and with fun, no dirty air, to put it in simple layman's terms. I think that Max, should he get into the lead on lap 1 again, McLaren can just do something different to whatever Max decides to do. I think Max is destined for 3rd place, should it be a dry race. But the problem is we have rain in the air. It could be a wet start and then it turns dry. We don't know exactly, but the highest chance of rain is tomorrow. Does that help him or hinder him? Well, you would think that with the really skinny wings that he's running, it would hinder him if we're taking Silverstone as any kind of evidence of how a low downforce Red Bull negotiates those kind of conditions. So I don't think it's going to be panic stations for McLaren. 2nd and 3rd in the sprint is not a disaster. They're fighting each other for the drivers. The constructors is wrapped up. Oscar gets 1 extra point. It's kind of like the sprint never happened, really.
Yeah, it's there's no problem at all for McLaren. They are in the absolute pound seats because their setup, of course, means you saw what happened in the sprint. They were very close to winning it. They couldn't quite do it, but if you had that exact scenario and weather conditions and Max Verstappen leading at turn 1 again, that might be very different had we had pit stops and, like you say, undercuts and things like that, where they can maybe get an advantage and get ahead in that situation.
Because they could just play an alternate strategy. Yeah, one of them follows Max, the other one goes into the pits. Max is screwed either way.
Exactly. So they're fighting at the front there. And then also, if it rains, they still have a high downforce setup that it's good in wet conditions, and they'll be miles clear like they were at Silverstone, where they just basically lap the whole field. So
I reckon we're in big trouble if it's wet tomorrow. I think the McLarens could lap everybody.
Yeah, I genuinely do. So they're in the pound seats for it. They don't need to change things. It's a million times more of a gamble. Like they won't watch that race and go, we should do what Max has done there. That definitely won't be the case. Like, I would be amazed if, clip this if it's wrong, but they're not going to turn up with a skinny rear wing because there's the chance of rain.
No.
The gamble did not work at Silverstone for Max. McLaren don't need to take that risk. They're going to be good either way.
And also as well, Lando was, compared to his teammate, pretty poor in sprint qualifying. Realistically, we're probably looking at a front row lockout for McLaren into the qualifying session we have later. Max can't do that same thing from 3rd, in my opinion. Maybe he will be able to. But it's a lot harder if Max is trying to slingshot both the McLarens on lap 1 to take the lead. So realistically, that will be a buffer as well to stop Max from trying to dictate the race as well. Next question, people on Patreon remember Tony Soprano. They shortened the Kemmel Straight DRS zone prior to the 2024 race and it was a disaster. Why didn't they learn from that lesson and extend it again? I don't know. What? Spa has struggled for quite some time with overtaking. It is very much an Italian Grand Prix kind of problem now, where skinny wings means everyone's going faster and there's not enough discrepancy between the car at the front with a low downforce setup and the one trying to slipstream them. And this is a problem that has maybe led to this alternate year on, year off for Spa, where it's not maybe getting the same eyeballs as it once did as one of the most exciting races on the calendar. It's just not anymore. It's an iconic circuit. It's amazing to watch these cars go round it. But if we're being real, the racing spectacle has been poor for quite some time. So I am surprised that they haven't made some adjustments. You know, some people question why isn't there DRS in the last sector? Well, it's hard to with that very fast left-hander at the end. So yeah, I'm surprised maybe they didn't try to give some kind of chance. Just start the DRS earlier, please.
I'm the opposite actually, because I think that when they had that, everyone was moaning that it was too much of a slam dunk overtake, and I'm pretty sure you could go back to our podcast and watch back, and I'm pretty sure we'd probably be saying you don't need a DRS zone that long. They've already got the slipstream. And, you know, when Max was flying through the field from 14th and just passing everyone like they weren't even there, we're all going, oh, this is a joke. Like Spa, you can't overtake anywhere else. And then they just breeze past in the DRS. So I don't want to beat up too much on the people that have to decide the DRS zone, because it's not a job I'd want to do, because it's a weird situation where you don't have a simulated race until, well, I guess you kind of do with the sprint a little bit, but like in a normal circumstance, you don't have a simulated race, so you don't know how it's going to play out until we're kind of there, and then they kind of have to stick with it. And then next year you've got completely different cars, and you don't know how it's going to be again. So,
but we haven't had different cars from this year to last year, and
yeah, but
surely
I still think
that's
that
a simulated race going
true,
to this year.
And maybe this is the Max Verstappen, you know,
this is when Max wins the sprint.
Speaking now, yeah. If you had you put the DRS a little bit further, Piastri overtakes Max on lap 2, and Piastri clears off, wins the race by 12 seconds. In my opinion, what's more exciting, Piastri on Max's gearbox for 15 laps and can't overtake, versus he overtakes once and is miles clear? I'd almost argue that the 15 laps is more exciting to have him behind.
Yeah. In an ideal world, I'd like to see side-by-side action. We didn't see that, but I think the bigger test pool here is not just the fight for the lead in the top 3. No one was overtaking. Nobody. Nobody.
Hamilton and
stuck.
Antonelli made no progress. I think Hamilton made one overtake.
Yeah.
And
so
they're in the top cars. That's more of the takeaway, yeah.
Right, is the fact that we're not seeing overtakes anywhere, and this kind of, well, unless tomorrow is a changeable condition race, we don't need to talk about it, we could be in for a bit of a stinker tomorrow if we do indeed get a dry race. So there's nothing stopping them, as far as I'm aware, of adding 50 metres to the DRS zone ahead of tomorrow's race, but I don't think they'll do that. Next question, people on Patreon remember Katy. How sad is it that a track that used to be so good for overtaking has become near impossible? It is. It is really sad to watch, to be honest with you, because I don't want to dislike the Belgian Grand Prix. I don't want to dislike Spa-Francorchamps, but we're here going, like, the expectations are now so low going into this race. And don't get me wrong, there are other stinkers out there. Spa is not the only one to fall foul, especially in these horrible, massive, heavy cars that we currently have. But it's not the problem of the track, it's the problem of the cars. So it's sad to see such an iconic classic circuit fall foul to these new regulations, which were once so promising in 2022. Oh my God, they can overtake. Ground effect is it? This is the one. To now what we are currently experiencing in 2025, where nobody can get close, the dirty air is too much, the cars are too heavy, the tyres are overheating, the engine's overheating. It's just, I think it's the sport really is where it's kind of sad, rather than specifically the track.
Yeah, we're thankful that we've got this great battle between the two McLarens, but once that's done and we get to Abu Dhabi, I won't really miss these regulations with how it's going now, because I think we got to... Weirdly, we had this conversation in 2021 where we kind of said, oh, finally it's close and they're changing the regulations, please no. And we kind of felt like that at the end of 2024. We were kind of going, no, don't change the rules. Weirdly, half a year later, I'm now going, please get in the bin. They can't come soon enough, because they are horrible for passing and stuff. And it's not really on Spa. You look at last year, it was a great race, but only because George Russell went for a gamble, and then even then there was no overtaking. It was just because he did something different and ended up at the front, and then Hamilton couldn't pass him on track. So it is a shame that these circuits are getting outgrown and not delivering great racing, but fingers crossed for new regulations and
for
Spa
next
can
year,
deliver.
where they can't go any faster than 150 mile an hour without topping out, and every other problem that's come out.
True. I mean,
maybe that's the thing.
Maybe that will help them if they're slower on the straights, and then they can
unpredictable
overtake each other,
cars, more mistakes, maybe. Who knows? But I was going to say tomorrow. Next year is going to be fascinating. I just hope to God that there isn't a team that's 1.5 seconds clear, because otherwise we're cooked. We're fully cooked. Next question. P1 Patreon member Lumixion: is the sprint looking like a prelude to the race, or will pit stops be the key to the win? I think it will be changeable conditions. We're manifesting it. No red flags. Just a nice little wet to dry race. Then of course it's going to be down to strategy. It's going to be down to the pit stops. It's going to be down to who risks it, who doesn't. I guess in one reality where it's wet and then it turns dry and Max is kind of leading halfway through, maybe he could win. I don't know. But I can't see anything other than a McLaren 1-2, personally. If it isn't a McLaren 1-2, McLaren have done something wrong. They've made a mistake. The drivers have made a mistake. Because they are clear. They are absolutely miles ahead. Can we please just appreciate this? McLaren have an incredible car. So I don't think the sprint is necessarily what we saw today is nothing compared to what we'll see tomorrow. And I think Max will struggle massively, as we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I think he will. He's going to basically the front row, in theory, today should be locked out by the two McLarens. They'll have more time. It won't be a one lap. So in theory, they won't have to, you do wonder how much of Norris's deficit was a banker lap yesterday, that when they can put 2 laps in, they should, in theory, because they've got the car to do it, be half a second clear of the entire field. Max is in third. He's not going to be able to overtake both of them into the first turn, however well he plays it like he did today. And then if it's wet, there's going to be no DRS, so it's going to be very hard to overtake, and the McLarens are going to be so quick. And then I think the excitement will come from, it will come from the pit stops and people changing tyres. But even if it's dry, I think, unfortunately, even if it is a dry race from start to finish, that sprint just showed us that it will all be down to tyre strategy. And do we just hope that the difference in the Pirelli dry tyres means that it can be a little bit different and exciting, and someone takes a risk and does something different? You never know. So the only positive from that sprint is it doesn't look like it's not going to play out exactly the same. And if it does, and Max is in the lead, we're going to have a good race, because he's probably not going to be able to stay there.
Yeah, if Max is in the lead, that is something's kicked off for sure. If you missed our predictions podcast, where I think we mentioned it, there is a step difference between the hards and then the mediums and the softs. So the hards is an extra step harder, if you see what I mean. So there's a bigger discrepancy between trying to pull off a one stop and then going on the fresher, stickier rubber of the mediums and the softs. And finally, Holbutt 9 comes in with a question: why is it such a useless format? Boring. Of course, talking about the sprint format. I know Tommy, we haven't got another half an hour, but I know Tommy would absolutely cook this sprint format if he could, and probably will. But I still think I think it's a good format. It's fine. I don't mind it. On reflection, in hindsight, we've said this before, we've discussed it before. I quite enjoyed the sprint being part of the weekend, like how the sprint race was kind of like a race qualifying thing, and then it led into the main event, and then it created this whole weekend of drama. Whereas now it's sort of like one thing and then the other, and it just, I don't know. There is definitely a problem with it, and I agree with you, Tommy, on that point. But I don't think it's useless. I think the cars are useless, and we have no strategy, and therefore we just see that first phase of the race where everyone goes, "I can't wait for it to start. Can't wait for the action to unfold," because it usually comes through the strategy.
It does, yeah. I still, like a sprint in the fact that we go straight into a qualifying session instead of another practice session. You don't have, you've said it many times about you'd rather have a boring sprint race, and boring in inverted commas, because don't get me wrong, it's not the greatest race in the world, but I think we've been spoilt the fact that the top three cars line astern is a boring
Finish
race.
Within 1.5 seconds in the sprint, and we're like, boring. By the way, I'm not calling it boring.
I'm not. Three years ago, we were all complaining that Max was 20 seconds clear, and now you've got three cars fighting for the win, although incredibly difficult to pass. You still got three cars fighting for the win, and there's still a chance. So you go, it wasn't the most exciting sprint, and this is the problem with the sprint. I'd rather have it than a free practice session, but that's not to say that it can't be better. And what annoys me about it is that you're just taking, arguably, other than the race start, which is always the best part of a Grand Prix, the most boring section of the Grand Prix, where everyone just sits there and waits for pit stops, as a format. And that doesn't work. You need to just say, you know what, drivers? Well, it's not even that, because every single driver we speak to says, change one rule in F1, they go, give us reverse grid. I mean, that's the guys at the back, but
no surprise.
But still, it's something different, and it needs to be different rather than just a miniature worse version of a Grand Prix, because that doesn't work. The sprint should be something exciting.
It should. I think the Formula One, through timings and everything else, they are quite restricted in what they're able to offer, because, of course, they don't want to put any big sessions on a Friday because nobody will be watching compared to at the weekend. And plenty. It's also lost momentum.
It's also lost momentum. It was so hyped that first year of, oh, there's this crazy new thing. It's called sprints. Oh my God. Okay, cool. Oh, fans are really divisive. We're talking about it every single time there's a sprint weekend. What do you think? Oh, I hate it. I love it. Blah, blah, blah. Three races. Next year, 6. And I think everyone would have bet everything that the year after would be 9, and that's how they'd kind of do it. Because MotoGP, as an example, they have a sprint every single race weekend now. But yet it's 6, 6, 6, 6, and it's almost just like plateaued, and they're just kind of like, oh, we'll leave this for a while. We don't really know what to do with it, and I think that's a shame. They feel like they just kind of like, oh yeah, we kind of stuck with this now, so we'll just do it, rather than using it as a thing to like spice up the action or make something exciting happen and evolve and try different formats. It could be a really good test bed for Grand Prix racing.
Yeah, or putting more points on offer, having it slightly longer. Who knows? But I completely agree, actually, because us as fans, I think a lot of us are going, sprint, whatever. I'm sure if we didn't do this as a job, occasionally, sprint quali, I'm actually out with the family. I'll catch up on it later. Things
especially
like that.
Especially now the sprint is before qualifying, it doesn't feel like the main event anymore. So it feels like a lesser thing where. And we find this with our content, that people will watch qualifying and they'll be like, all right, I'll catch up on the sprint now. Whereas the sprint should be a race that you're excited for, not just, that's the early thing that kind of is a little bit of a teaser for qualifying.
Yeah. Now, of course, there are hardcores out there, the ones that obviously join us for our watch-alongs, and big up to you lot for coming and joining us for every session. But I know, and I completely get it. I understand why people might just be like, I'll catch up on it later.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. We have demolished the sprint format, and we'll see if
same
Formula
again
1...
for the next sprint.
Oh, exactly. Even the drivers are like, it's a sprint, whatever.
They just
the main
don't care.
races,
It's
later.
It's not the way it should be.
Right, that's it. Tommy, what are your final thoughts?
Final
Say something
thoughts.
positive.
There's a Grand Prix qualifying session next, and it could, based on qualifying yesterday, which was brilliant. It's going to be another banger, I'm sure. Qualifying always delivers, and then a very different conditions for the race. So lots to look forward to still.
Hell yeah, we will see you, well, literally later. There's going to be more podcasts coming out of our ears, as well as watch-alongs and everything else. We're live for every single competitive session. P1 live show tickets are still available. Go get them if you want to go see us in real life, and we will see you very soon. Lots of love. Take care. Bye!
Bye!